What are pesticides?
Pesticides are chemicals which kill pests. Pests can be weeds, fungi, disease organisms, bacteria, fungi, etc. Can also be insects, and maybe that's the group. So pesticide really is the umbrella term for things like herbicides, fungicides, insecticides, algicides, any kind of side you like, really.
Do they have any effect on the environment as well?
Yes, they do. I think the numbers that are bandied around are that my generation, for instance, people that are, were born in the 50s, the 1950s or thereabouts, we have probably 10 times, maybe between 5 and 10 times more synthetic chemicals in our bodies than our parents did. Our offspring, the offspring of my generation, have probably 2 or 3 times more pesticides in their bodies than I have, because pesticides are just all over the place. They're in the air, the soil, and the water. And some of them don't go away very quickly. In the United States, for instance, the EPA is charged with monitoring the fate of pesticides in the environment. They regulate, I think it's about 100 compounds that can be in the water, of which several are pesticides. About a third of them are pesticides. However, the EPA also have lists of candidates that should be regulated. And that list contains another 200 chemicals, of which, again, about 40% of them are pesticides, in drinking water or anywhere else. So we're, again, kind of engaging in an experiment with humans that really has no control. We don't know what's going to happen. And the problem with synthetic pesticides, more so than with pesticides that have a biological basis, synthetic pesticides, there's no biological machinery or biochemical machinery in organisms to cope with those molecules, because they're brand new. Any biological molecule, there's probably thousands of years of exposure to those molecules that biology has developed a means to break them down and render them less toxic. Synthetic pesticides, we've not had the time to develop any biological machinery, especially in the higher life forms, humans of course being up there, nor have we had the time to select bacteria that can break them down. So we're releasing chemicals into the environment that we don't know what their fate is, and we do not know what their potential effects can be when they're all mixed together, because we're not just exposed to one chemical, we're exposed to several, hundreds even. And when those chemicals are tested and released for general usage, whether it's in agriculture or wherever, or the home pesticides or home herbicides, all those chemicals are tested in isolation. So it's just one chemical in one test. What we've got going on now is we're looking at the effects of several chemicals that may interact with each other or may not on life as we know it, our own lives included. Is that an appropriate thing to be be doing with humans in the 21st century? It's a good question.
How common are they nowadays?
Very common. Very common. There's very few crops that are grown without pesticides. We've almost, in fact, almost no landscape. It's not just crops. Almost no landscape is maintained without the use of pesticides. We have situations in modern suburbia where pesticides are almost mandated to be used because we have associations, we have covenants about what the landscape's supposed to look like, how many weeds you can have per square foot. That kind of thing is adding to the chemical load of the environment. And is it necessary for the average homeowner to have a lawn with absolutely no weeds in it at all? Maybe yes, maybe not. I can understand it if you're on the centre court of Wimbledon and the world's watching the tennis, looking at the grass. But if it's just a subdivision in Forsyth County, Georgia, does it really matter? And I think that some of our ideas have come from advertising, because the chemical companies that make the pesticides can advertise on TV that perhaps someone's a slacker or is less worthy than if you have a weed in your lawn, you might be less worthy than the neighbour who doesn't. And that subtle advertising that happens on television has really, I think, influenced lots and lots of people.
What are some positive aspects to having pesticides?
Pesticides are used to prevent weed infestations, which can lower crop yields and can compromise the aesthetics of ornamental plantings. They're used to control damage from insects in the home. They're used to stop insects invading the home. They're used also to preserve stored foods such as grains or green vegetables. They're used to control insects that may cause diseases, may be unpleasant, may frighten people. And they're being very strongly advertised and marketed to the public. The public have generally an idea that to see an insect is somehow bad. I don't agree with that. I think insects have a place in the world. If it weren't for insects and decomposition, we'd be knee-deep in debris. Pesticide regulations in most states are, certainly in agriculture, pesticide regulations are handled by the Department of Agriculture for each state. Departments of Agriculture are not staffed adequately, so there's very little inspection. If someone gets a license to apply, they have to do something seriously wrong before they'll be inspected. Most states, and Georgia is typical, do not have the people on the ground that can verify that pesticides have been applied as according to the specifications on the label of the package. Just don't have the people out there to do the job. In order to apply a pesticide for money on someone else's property, you have to have a license. That license trains a person how to handle the pesticide, on what can be sprayed or treated with that pesticide. But sometimes people extend it. There's no real policing and testing of those people with their licenses. So that could be a potential problem also.
How effective are pesticides?
If they're applied at the right time to the right organism, then they're very effective. Termiticides, for instance. Almost everyone that owns a home will embrace using termiticides in and around the home. They're very effective at keeping termites away. Almost all pesticides are tested for efficacy before they receive the official government permission to be sold. Some of them are very, very effective. Small amounts will be toxic to target organisms. The problem with that is that small amounts will also kill non-target organisms with the same metabolic processes as the targets.
What is urban farming?
Urban farming is growing food in urban environments, basically. It's not like growing corn on 100 acres inside a urban community. It will be small, relatively small operations, small in terms of land area, but very intensively managed, highly productive. And I think that urban farming, we're going to see a lot more of it. We know that fossil fuels are not as abundant as they were, and it may not make sense to be flying food around the world or even traveling across continents with it, when almost everywhere that humans live, the climate is favorable for growing something. And in Georgia especially, we have a wonderful climate as far as growing plants is concerned. We can have food produced in almost any part of Georgia, almost any time of the year. It's just really not been economically feasible. But is it feasible from the point of view of the health of the environment? Probably yes. So I think that's going to be a big thing in the future, urban farming. I think we just should call it market gardening, which is the term that I was brought up with 40 odd years ago, 50 years ago.
Where is it practiced the most currently?
Urban farming. I would say in Europe, more so than here. Certainly in third world countries also. South America, Central America, Asia, China. In countries that are not so resource rich as this one, people are growing food anywhere they can. I think urban farming is very effective because if it's intensively managed, a family of four can probably feed themselves on less than half an acre. They might not feed themselves in the manner to which they're accustomed right now, but certainly one can sustain oneself from the products of a family of four can sustain themselves from the products of half an acre if it's intensively managed and wisely, and the choice of species suits the environment.